All the good stuff. Okay, what do you want to hear?
Okay, well, with me right now, I have an ex-Muslimah, ex-Muslim female that
Yeah.
is living in Egypt right now, and actually, she used to kind of, be passionate about her religion, and now she's
Mhm.
an ex-Muslim. So just tell me how you became Muslim, and all that good stuff. How you left Islam. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, um my I guess it started with my mom meeting my dad, and my mom was I guess sort of like a what they call like a lazy Christian or a non-practicing Christian, and when she met my dad, she converted to Islam, and they basically moved to Egypt years later, and we pretty much grew up most of our lives here in Egypt and were raised Muslim. And it was interesting because um, it was very conflicting because we had to grow up between like my mom's American cultural background and my dad's Egyptian background as well, living in an Egyptian environment. And it's just weird because you always feel like an outsider no matter where you are. I felt like an outsider in America because I was Muslim, and then I felt like an outsider in Egypt because I'm American. And yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. They just pretty much raised me to be Muslim since I was little.
But like, did you find Islam on your own? Like, kind of like how I did. Like, I was like kind of raised with that Muslim environment, but I wasn't into it. Did you like kind of consider yourself kind of like a revert, like you discovered Islam on your own type of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think around my teens, that's when I got more serious about it. I was like, I want to understand, okay, because that's when I learned this whole thing about apologetics. I didn't know what it was before that it even existed. I didn't even know the word for that until after I left Islam. But anyway, but the whole, use of SDs and the um, all those Western apologetics and apologists that I would listen to, and they sort of helped me reframe a more liberal kind of la 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 kind of version of Islam, which kind of helped because I was struggling since I was like as young as maybe 9, you know.
Wow, that's really early. That you started
Yeah,
like
I
practice.
started.
Yeah, go
Mhm.
ahead.
No, I'm saying I started thinking. Even I had like some. I can still remember, like even some, like questioning creationism at like 10 or something. I'm thinking like the whole like, because you'd hear apologists say like, well, where did this chair come from? You look at the chair and you obviously know that there was a designer or a creator, so obviously God, right? And I used to think to myself, well, why are we projecting our own human perceptions of something being designed or not designed on the entire universe? It's not like we have anything to compare it to, you know. But that
So,
didn't last very long.
how was the climate of Egypt, like where you were living from? Like, did you have any atheists around, or just like all Muslims? Were they fanatic?
No, I didn't know what an atheist was besides what the Quran would say. So pretty
Wow.
much a very negative image.
I
Um,
gotcha. Like,
yeah.
so how did you get into the religion? So you said like Yusuf Estes, and you saw like I guess YouTube lectures online of Muslim apologists.
Yeah, yeah. My brother also had a role to play in that because he used to, he had his little fanatic phase, I guess. And so there was like a lot of Islamic videos being exchanged and, watched in the house and stuff like that. And I remember even starting out with like Harun Yahya videos about like the science in the Quran kind of stuff.
Wow,
Like
Harun
that's more the
Yahya has
early.
affected a lot of people. Like I can tell he's
Mhm.
influenced a lot of young Muslims.
Oh yes, oh yes. He was wrong about quite a few things, though.
Man,
um,
like, so did you start, so you got into the scientific miracles of the Quran, which they actually borrow from the Christians, that type of approach. And then basically, so just
mhm.
overnight, you started wearing the niqab or the hijab and like you got into it.
I voluntarily put it on at 12 and a half, which was actually before like because you're supposed to wear it as soon as you menstruate, and I actually wore it about 6 months before. But looking back, it was more of like like a peer acceptance kind of thing, because when you're going through school here in Egypt, and the girls start to wear it, you start to think, maybe I'll try it on, and it just sort of becomes trendy, I guess. It's weird, and you get like this reverence if you put it on, like, oh, you like turn into this angel overnight or something, it's
Yeah, it's the same thing here in America. I'm actually in my university. It was the same way as a Muslim girl that I knew took it off, and she wrote a
Mhm.
blog about it, actually saying that, it was sort of like an acceptance circle. Like
Mhm.
when she started wearing it, like people, the girls started saying a salam to her, and like whenever
Yeah,
she didn't
and
have it,
compliments.
yeah, like whenever she didn't have it on, like people, Muslims wouldn't even approach her and talk to her at all. And it was just like, it was more of like peer acceptance, just like you said.
Yeah. And it was also a little bit of vanity, which is oxymoronic because you think that, the hijab is supposed to like cover up your beauty, but to me, I felt like it beautified me in a way, I guess because I was struggling with a lot of acne. I don't know. I was just very self-conscious at 12 years old,
Oh,
or 12 and a half.
yeah, I don't blame you for thinking that way because, like, when you put on the hijab, like, you have all these different styles of hijab tutorials. You have a certain way of wearing makeup when you have the hijab. They actually look, some of these hijabi girls look really good, like,
Yeah,
when they have it
I
on.
was kind of like that actually. Yeah, I was like the hijab fashionista kind of girl.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I mean there's so many like hijab tutorial thing that is the trend on YouTube right now.
Mm.
Like since even like 8 years ago, I remember like hijab
Oh, I
tutorial.
know. I will tell you more, I guess, when it's not so public. But yeah, let's just say I guess I was one of the first few people that came out doing that, actually.
Oh, that's funny. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
I used to pick on those girls too. So it's a good thing we're not talking when I was Muslim because I was the
Oh my goodness.
strict
Maybe you
guy that
sent
you
me
hated,
something.
that wouldn't leave you alone or anything. But yeah, I
But
want to get into more of like the female aspect of it. Like, did you have guys approaching you for marriage all the time, harassing you? How was
I
that for you?
remember guys approaching me for marriage as young as 13. And I don't mean officially, like to my dad, but like just in the street. And it was kind of crazy, but I didn't really take it seriously. It's maybe some kind of flirtation or something, because there's a lot of like verbal and sexual harassment in this country. I don't need to tell you. Um, so yeah, there was a lot of more attention that, in fact, I actually had more attention wearing hijab than without, which is very ironic.
That's funny. So, like, tell me, these are not stereotypes that we're creating in our heads. Like, there are Muslim men that just like message a Muslim girl online, say, "Hey, you want to get married?" "Hey, sexy." Well, not like that, but it's like they sort of bombard you with all these messages.
Oh yeah, I mean, remember Yahoo Messenger when that was a thing? I
Yeah.
mean, people could like find your profile online and then they can just start messaging you, or on ICQ. I was online, way back. I'm in my late 20s, and um, guys would just, I mean, because we also have like intense sexual repression in this country. So they're just like desperate. They don't care if I'm 13. Maybe they even prefer it. I don't know until this day. But I would just get bombarded with all kinds of like inappropriate messages all the time. And I'm not saying that that has to do with the religion, but definitely with the cultural mindset here and the repression.
So let's get into like what made you want to question Islam and what made you want to question your faith since you were like pretty passionate about it. It sounds to me that you were trying to be more of like a modernist, I guess, trying to make it work type of thing.
Oh, yeah, I kind of bought into the whole what do you call it? The liberalized version, or the liberal version of Islam.
Yeah.
Not so liberal though, but I mean, like the use of Estes approach. You know what I mean? Instead of, or if you're familiar, are you familiar with any Egyptian what do you call it? Da'is, or
I know
preachers?
what's his name? Abu Ishaq al-Hawaini, who is extreme, and I know Muhammad al-Hassan, who is also extreme. Egyptians.
Do you
Those
know
are
the
more of the like the
more?
Salafi type.
Oh, yeah. No, but there
Yeah.
was like a big booming, like this big famous guy. His name was Amr Khalid. He's still around.
Oh, I know him. I know he's more of the
Yeah.
spiritual Sufi reformer. He's a nice guy. I mean,
He's
looking
a
at
nice
it,
guy.
but
I
it's
mean,
just
he revolutionized things even for me. I used to go into his lectures at the mosque um, on Fridays with my dad, and I hope my voice isn't shaking. I have no idea why I'm shaking. Why the hell am I shaking? This is so weird. Okay. Um, yeah, I used to go to his lectures and I used to buy his books and I'd buy his tapes and I'd listen to them. And it was like for the first time in the Middle East in general, someone wasn't just like I don't know, like just badgering you and telling you like you're gonna go to hell if you don't do this and that, you know. He was more gentle about things, you know. He talked about different subjects. It wasn't just the same old message, you know, the doomsdaying.
yeah.
Um,
For those that don't know, Amr Khalid, he's more of a, like a Muslim speaker that kind of wants Muslims to do good charity work. He's
mhm.
like really modernized in his approach to Islam. And like,
He's modernized, but he also, I remember he had this famous lecture where he was like, you know, you have to break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. And, you know, like Allah's love for you is greater than anything you can imagine. Then if you do something haram. And even when I was young, I was like, that's just a little too much. I mean,
yeah, so he still had that. It's sort of like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf in America, where like, they might seem loose on some things, but
yeah.
some other things like he's just really strict.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what were the questioning points for you?
Um, Pretty much all my life, really. But I think it started when I was around 8 or 9, actually, as young as that, because that's when I first learned. Because when I was around 9, that's when we got our first computer and access to the internet, and I could search anything I wanted. And I think that's when I came across, I don't know if I found it online or my parents told me, but I was looking up like about the whole marriage to Aisha thing, and
Okay.
that didn't go well with me because I was 9, you know.
Oh, so you were 9 at the time when you found out.
Yeah, and so I was looking at myself in the mirror like, really? Like 9, really? And it just, I had this really bad feeling, you know. Um, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But it's one of those things that you kind of have to swallow and you have to cover up because it's scarier to question the foundation which you've built your identity and your family, and you trust them, and your family wouldn't tell you, you know, raise you to believe in things that don't make sense, you know, like, come on, it's your parents and, you know, society that we live in, you know, and it's a lot harder to go against the grain than to, you know what I mean, than to just sort of have cognitive dissonance.
So did your family like want you to get married? Were they kind of strict about that? And did you ever try to pursue a marriage?
No, I have pursued relationships though that didn't fare very well with my dad.
Uh,
But that was kind of the norm, even in Egypt. I mean, kids in high school, they date. I mean, but most of the time, most of the girls that I knew, it was behind their family's back, and it was like all hell would break loose if their family would find out. I mean, I remember even my neighbor, the girl, she was like a couple years older than me. One day, she went to school, or they didn't take her to school or something, and I saw her with a cast on her arm. And I asked her sister what happened, and she just looked at me, and I didn't even have to ask her. Like I knew it had to do with boys, because I would see that girl at school hanging out with guys, talking just, you know, normally, you know, within maybe a group of girls and guys or whatever. And maybe she was getting close to someone, I don't know. But I guess that's sort of what happened because in our society, there's no other reason to beat your daughter unless if that's what's going on, you know?
yeah, it sort of sounds repressed. I was listening. I gotta mention the Last Pharaoh on this, because
Mm,
I'm sure you know him, the Last Pharaoh.
yeah. I think I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, he's an ex-Muslim on YouTube, and I've been hearing him talk about the climate in Egypt. It's sort of like, people just the Muslims just do whatever the freak they want. They smoke weed, they go dating, they have sex,
But
but
they
when
won't
it
eat
comes
pork.
to like the five daily prayers, like they're on
Mhm.
point. Like you better pray 5 times a day.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that's everybody. I mean, in Egypt, they're definitely more relaxed than maybe other like Gulf countries, um, like Arabian Gulf countries like Kuwait and whatever. They're more relaxed in that sense. Like, no one's like badgering me to pray all the time or anything like that. But
Oh, okay.
there's lots of people that don't really practice Islam here in Egypt. In fact, I think we have one of the most highest growing atheists in the Middle East right now.
Yeah, I heard about that there,
Mm.
and even in Saudi Arabia, where like apostasy is punished by death, like there's like a 5% increase. But Egypt, I heard that there's a lot of atheists growing in that area, and like Richard Dawkins' work is like being published in Arabic over there and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So I'm just like, wow.
I haven't seen it in the stores. I really doubt that it's being published, but I'm pretty sure
Oh.
some people are getting access to the PDFs online or something.
Yeah, something like that
Yeah,
online.
because I'd be scared to even just go ask about it at the store. Like, I don't want them to be like, yalla bint get out of here.
Wow. So
Yeah.
how was it like after leaving Islam? Like, was it hard for you to just kind of normalize into the world? Like, was there like any like depression or anything like that?
Oh, you have no idea. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. And I already have a history of depression and anxiety, which, by the way, I must add, believing in jinns did not help at all. At all. I mean, nocturnal panic attacks, the first thing that would come to my mind was, oh, shoot, there's a jinn in my room or something, or something's trying to possess me. Like, those beliefs did not help me recover at all from that,
Yeah,
which
I'll add that I used to actually participate in these exorcisms, and I used to,
really,
yeah, I
wow.
used I used to be that guy that helped out with that kind of stuff. And we would have some cases where it was like a little girl, 13 years old, and she just really had a mental problem, and like the parents were insisting that it was a jinn, it's a jinn, and
Mhm,
we were just like, no, it's probably just a mental disorder. And there's this one girl that just had seizures, and the father insisted it's a jinn, it's a jinn, but it's
mhm,
no, she has seizures. So it
mhm.
gets so complicated. I can't imagine what that did to your mind, because you might have been thinking like, oh, there are jinns. So was there a point where you're just like, no, it's not a jinn?
Um, Later, I guess, but at first when it kind of scared me, I guess it made me a bit more religious. Like, I would try to pray more. I would try to I remember when I'd have like a nocturnal attack and I'd wake up in the morning, and because what can happen is you can feel paralyzed for about a minute. And when that would happen, I'd be so scared. Like, I literally, and you feel like a heaviness in your chest. So it gives you the perception that something's on top of you, but there isn't.
Yeah.
And so when that would happen, I used to think, oh, shoot, there's a jinn on me or something. When I think about it now, it's ridiculous. But back then I was just terrified, and I would just start reciting like al-Fatha and whatever Quran I could remember, and it would go away. Now I thought that that's what made it go away, but really it was just a passage of time. Um, but yeah, at the time that really didn't help. In fact, one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of talk about this publicly, even anonymously, is because a lot of people don't realize how much your life depends on your identity as a Muslim, the decisions you make, the people the friends you make, the places you live, the people you interact with, the marriages, the sexual orientation, the everything. It's so it really changes everything. I mean, when I started to question Islam and I left, or as if it were a place that you can leave, but it's sort of, I didn't really know what else to go on. Like, I didn't even know who I was. That's how entrenched it was.
Yeah, I felt the same way after I left. Like my interaction with women, like I
Mhm.
started to really like open up my eyes, and I was just like, wait, women aren't supposed to be these over sexualized creatures. And
Yeah.
And I'm just like thinking in my mind, like I was just hanging out with this girl and she's like telling me she's on her period. And I'm just like, whoa, when I first heard that, I'm just like, is she allowed to tell me that?
Mhm.
And it's just
I
it
don't
does
know.
mess with your head a little
Girls
bit.
have
Like,
cooties. Yeah. It's really ridiculous. In fact, I find that actually repressive to men as well. I mean, restricting the level of like perception and the of women and of themselves. I mean, the way that they're portrayed is like they're these filthy animals that can control themselves. That's not true.
yeah.
You
It,
know, it's
it,
it's unfair for both sexes, really.
and even like your perception, like with other Christians and Jews and atheists, you're just thinking in your mind, like, wow, I hated these quote unquote kuffar for nothing. They're actually normal people.
I know. And that was actually hard because I remember even my mom and I talking about this because my mom, being an ex-Christian, all of her relatives are Christian. In fact, I have an uncle who's a pastor, and it was very hard for her to reconcile. And she would get sad sometimes, like my family's gonna go to hell, or like we can't really associate with them very much. You know what I mean? Because they're not Muslim. I remember talking to my family about these things, about those hadiths or Quran verses that say like, those of you who befriend, the non-believers, you're just like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I remember thinking like that's kind of weird and twisted, and um I guess we ignored it for the most part, but it always left us with this weird feeling whenever we were interacting with a person of another religion,
yeah,
like, oh, it's a Christian, they've got it wrong, we're right, kind of like just going on in the background of your head and you don't really realize it.
yeah. Like in
Um,
my mind, like when you're among that Muslim circle group, like you
mm,
can never open your mind enough to accept homosexual people on a
yeah,
level after you leave Islam. Like after you leave Islam, you're just like, wow, I can just go hang out with a gay person at a bar and even hang out at a gay bar, even though I'm straight, and it
yeah,
will be absolutely normal. Like as a Muslim, you would never even think that. And I remember having Muslim friends that would just constantly rag on gay people or even someone that showed a sign of being feminine or whatever. It's like when I was Muslim, I'm just like, give it a break, dude, whatever. But after I
yeah.
left Islam, I'm just like, wow, they made such a big deal out of nothing.
I know, and it's called a phobia for a reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, I still have arguments about that. Just to fill you in, I am married currently right now, and he's I guess for the most part Muslim, although he's not very like he's not a practicing Muslim right now. I sort of influenced him a little bit because when I was questioning, this was actually after we got married, and this is why I was saying it's so important for people to know that you being a Muslim in your identity, it really changes things for you, especially in my life, because there's a lot of decisions I probably wouldn't have made if I was who I am now. And I think like 6 months into the marriage, I was looking up this because I was experiencing hair loss for some medical reason, and then I was trying to look up like some way to like a cosmetic solution, maybe hair extensions or something, and then I would look it up on Google. I was trying to see if it was haram or not. And for some reason, and this had nothing to do with my Google search, it's very weird. I saw a Wikipedia article talking about the criticism of hadith,
Okay.
and that question never came up in my mind before. Like, who are these people that are criticizing the hadith? I mean, it's pretty solid, it's authentic. I mean, I never really questioned it before. And I looked at it and I looked at all these people and they were also scholars. They weren't just Orientalists or non-Muslim critics. They were people within the religion over, centuries that have criticized like the authenticity of hadith. And that was sort of like the gateway for me into questioning.
Okay.
And
So like you saw the hadith or the hadith being questioned and like
mhm.
before you thought, oh, hadith, as long as it goes with the Quran, it's okay, but you never really thought critically about the teachings until that point?
I disliked a lot of the teachings, but I always went with the cognitive dissonance of like, or the excuse that, well, what do I know? God knows better. You
Okay.
know, who am I? I'm just a lowly human, even though I wouldn't like it and I would hate it. And I would pray to God, like asking, like, why would you put these terrible things in hadith? Can you at least show me the reason why, or help me understand, or help me be satisfied with whatever. Those were constantly my prayers because I was always trying to reconcile a lot of bad stuff because I spent a lot of times reading hadith, actually, a lot more than the average Muslim. It was sort of like reading stories to me because it was very plain, and it didn't require a lot of interpretation like the Quran could sometimes.
Yeah. And like
Yeah, and
looking at
mhm,
the different sects,
mhm,
that could
yes.
play a factor.
Oh, yeah. And so when I was questioning the old hadith that came around, I'm sure you're familiar with Quranist Muslims. Have you heard of Quranism?
Yeah, basically a
Mhm.
Reformation type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And so I became more affiliated with that the more I researched about it, and I found some of their websites. I read their arguments in detail. I lost so much sleep over that entire year just researching that stuff because I was just so obsessed with it because this was like a whole new world to me. Um, and I just kept, and I would look at like the Quran verses that say like, بأي hadith, um, I can't remember off the top of my mind right now.
Well, basically, like Quranism, for those that don't know, is like just taking the Quran only and
Mhm,
abandoning Hadith. And basically, what the Quranists like to use is a verse in the
mhm.
Quran that says, there is no Hadith
Other
except
than this,
for
yes.
Allah, and like people will make up Hadith. It says in the Quran like people
Mhm.
will make up Hadith in a nutshell. I can't remember the verse
Yes,
either.
yes, that's true. That's true. If I could remember, I would too. It's just I have to explain to the people that are listening is that if my memory is not that great, it's because after going through a lot of what I went through, I kind of didn't want to think about Islam anymore at all. So a lot of things are a bit foggy.
Oh yeah, it's
Um,
fine. Don't You're
yeah.
doing fine. I mean, I wanted to ask you since you brought it up though about your marriage. Like, does your husband know that you're ex-Muslim?
He does. He does. He doesn't know though that I'm an atheist. Like he suspects. I mean, the most I told him is I'm agnostic.
Oh,
Um, yeah, the atheism thing actually is recent. It's only been like about a few months.
oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, you don't have to reveal all the
Mhm.
details. Just you just have to encourage critical thinking.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
how I
trying.
look at it.
I'm trying. It's a little tricky with my husband because um, I mean, when I met him, he was like a huge like hadith believer, and once I poked holes in that and he saw me questioning it, he started to read the same sources I was. And then he was like, you know what? Maybe there's something to this. And then he became a Quranist like I was. And he's still somewhat like that, I guess. I mean, the last time we talked about it, he was not sure, but he kind of just wanted to hold on to it anyway because I guess he just didn't want to go through the whole mental exhaustion of questioning and all that stuff.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, Quranism, I think it's a little bit better than just accepting the hadiths or the other schools of
mhm,
thought because there's no offensive jihad in Quranism. It's just like all self-defense, even though
mhm.
it's
And
still
a lot of the
religion.
context is gone, so you interpret the verses in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
what you're like.
It's definitely useful.
How about your Muslim friends? Like, did you disconnect with them, just forget about them completely, or do you still keep in contact with some of them?
My best friend, we're still in contact. She didn't approve of me leaving Islam. In fact, when I first found out about like the whole Hadith thing, because when you look at the history, it's just I'll get into that later, but um, I was like so shocked about what I found, and I thought she'd want to be as interested as I am into knowing all these facts that really aren't publicized about hadith and the way that it was, collected and this so-called science of hadith and the authentication of it and all that stuff. And when I told her, she was completely shocked and like offended, and as if I was trying to take something so dear from her, and she was treating me like I was a crazy person.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, it was pretty disheartening. But we
Yeah.
kind of got over that. But ever since then, she just kind of she doesn't think that I like have, my screws on tight,
Yeah,
She,
most Muslims don't worry about it. Most Muslims will assume that you're mentally ill and
mhm.
they're
Or the
you're
devil
having
got.
yeah, you have some kind of depression going on. Oh,
Mhm,
you just had a bitter experience and
mhm,
everything. They use the same damn excuses and I
mhm.
don't worry about it at all.
Yeah, yeah. I was just listening to your interview with the ex-Muslim bisexual on you and you were talking about that, about how people around you just call you like mentally ill and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, this is pretty extreme. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, they
mm,
accuse you of that because like they don't want to admit that their religion is wrong, of course. So, like
nobody does.
yeah, like I think they do it with Christians too, like
Yeah.
ex-Christians that leave. Oh, you're mentally ill. You never understood true Christianity, blah blah
Hmm.
blah. But with Islam, I think it's like they're more
Hmm.
stalkerish, in my opinion. Like they're more like
Yeah.
trying to get in your business and expose you
They're
for
more
being
controlling, and I think I know why. I think I
why.
have an idea as to why. I mean, observing the way people behave out here, at least in Egypt, there's this attitude of like if you walk outside the line, or you know what I mean, of what you're expected to be, either as a Muslim or an Egyptian. They look at like it's as if they're thinking like, who are you? Who do you think you can just like parade around with your individual rights and your freedoms, not doing what you're told? I mean, who are you? I didn't get to have that, so you don't.
Yeah, it sounds like that a lot. Like it sounds like a lot of hidden jealousy. Like, oh
Yes.
man, you had the balls to leave Islam. I can't do it.
Maybe not just that, but maybe just something as simple as questioning, because I hear a lot of stories of kids or people being not ostracized, but they talk down to them, in a very condescending, somewhat abusive way if they question, like, what kind of garbage is that? Screw your head on straight, stop it and go do the dishes or whatever, just forget about it. You know what I mean? Or like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just as if it's like a fact, and like it's like you're trying to tell someone that the sky's red or something. It's, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
what how it is to them.
Yeah, it's a submissive mindset.
Mhm.
They don't appreciate like American free thinking or free country
No.
type of a deal. Like they carry that tradition from their Muslim countries. Like we hear and obey, and that's what Islam is. We hear and obey. That's what it
Hmm.
says in the
I think
Quran.
it's tribalism as well, a bit of tribalism, because
Yeah.
yeah, it's just oh, it's so messed up in so many ways, and it's also it has to do with the lack of education, lack of awareness. I mean, who here really in the Middle East would pick up a basic philosophy book, or I mean, if I try to explain what a logical fallacy was, they look at me like I'm weird. They don't. Um, it's really hard to reason with people, and they're very passionate. I mean, they kind of remind me of Italians a little bit. They're very
Yeah.
passionate people.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of passion. Like when I get cursed out by Muslims on my YouTube channel, like I just look at it, oh, you're just, you really the Arab people, especially, and I would say the Pakistani people are like really, really overly passionate and
Hmm.
just curse you out,
Very
don't even listen
realistic.
to the video, don't even listen to what you're saying. They just
Hmm.
say, and some of them actually told me, you can leave Islam, no problem, but just don't speak bad about Islam, keep it on
Hmm.
the D-low. And I'm just like, why can't I openly? I think this is very new. It's very new for them to receive criticism of their religion. So that's what I'm dealing with now. I'm
It is
trying.
because
Yeah,
you're kind of just brought up and taught like this is the way, and anything else is, the devil, or whatever, or it's a test. And another thing that I have to say about this whole about the way Islam kind of affected me, like the difference between my mental health back then and now is night and day. Now, I'm not going to blame the religion on that entirely, but it definitely played a part in terms of like the fear of hell
Yeah.
and going through anxiety. That didn't help at all. It exacerbated it, if anything. And
I know what you mean, like,
yeah,
because every day you're worried about burning in hell if you don't do the right thing.
yeah, and when you're younger, you think about the hell thing, but then as you get older, at least for me, the hell thing didn't really take priority. What was Because I started to learn about all these concepts of like, wait, what do you mean? Allah loves me? Really? Like before Amr Khalid, I never even knew that was even possible. Like I completely believed it was like 100% authoritarian, and like there was like no love in it. In fact, I was actually very jealous of Christians and Christianity because they really focus on the whole love aspect, you know what I mean? And I wanted that. In fact, I actually was Christian for about 2 weeks when I was 13 because that's how much I wanted it, you know? Um, that didn't work out though.
Yeah, in Islam, the concept of love, though, it's very different because it's like you have to take steps towards Allah for Him to love you first.
I
And
know it's like you have to meet a certain requirement. Um, but what appealed to me, Christianity at the time was, at least from like the not in terms of what's in the Bible, but what is preached in the church or what you see maybe on, I don't know, the 700 Club or whatever. I don't know. I guess I was kind of jealous because they could easily talk about love, but for me, it was always this fear that God didn't love me. You know, like why would he? I'm just this lowly human being, and I'm going through these trials and errors and trying to please this God, and
yeah,
it's like I always felt like whatever I did was never enough. It didn't matter if I did charity or if I prayed 5 times a day or 6 times a day, or if I did my tasbih after every prayer, if I wore my hijab better, if I fasted more. It always feels like it's not enough.
yeah, and like to be completely honest, like you hear so many stories on YouTube where like Allah answered my prayer and everything, but I just saw this ex-Somali ex-Muslim girl, say that she was making a lot of dua and everything, like supplications to God,
Mm,
and it
mhm,
just wasn't working at all. And I even tested myself with all of that, and it's just
mhm.
like all that really mattered were my actions, and they kind of
Yeah.
put that spin on it when it comes to Islam too. They say, well, if you do the actions, it's enough. You have to tie your camel. There's a hadith that says, tie your camel and
Mhm,
God will do the rest. But it's like, really, all you do is tie your camel. God's not doing anything. Um,
mhm,
so it was sort of like that. I sort of had like a paranoia about that. Is God answering me while I was Muslim? And,
mhm,
I'm doing all the extra prayers besides praying 5 times a day and everything like that.
mhm,
And I just realized then, like the day I stopped praying too, I just realized, wow, I feel completely the same. Like regardless if I pray or make dua and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of weird to stop doing
mhm,
it, of course. But it's
mhm,
like I feel like God will answer me if he exists. He will
mhm.
still answer me the same way. And then I realized, oh, there is no God.
Mm. Yeah, how did you come to realize that, like, how did you jump from like theism to atheism? Like, what was the moment that really?
Like for me, I did an old video on this, but just in
Oh,
case
really?
nobody wants to look back at it, of course, I have like 400 videos. But anyways, but yeah, like I basically the day I stopped praying, I was sort of classifying myself as agnostic Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
meaning like I didn't know which path it was, but I was still Muslim. And then I
Mm-hmm.
kind of jumped to agnostic deist after thinking,
Mm-hmm.
well, God's not going to judge us, whether we're Muslim or Christian or whatever, because
Mm-hmm.
God wouldn't worry about such small things if he did exist. So I started
Yeah.
giving God like a more broader perspective and the more benefit of the doubt kind of thing. And then I was just like, I don't know. I'm just agnostic. I don't know anything. I really don't know what's out there. And then
Mm-hmm.
I just realized, man, I am just agnostic atheist. And
Mm-hmm.
now I just feel like that term agnostic to me, it doesn't really give me a clarification of who I am. So I do just say I'm atheist,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Okay.
to everyone. But
Yeah,
I know it
I
works for some
definitely.
people. I know agnostic works for some people, but
Yeah, I would describe myself as an agnostic atheist because although I don't believe in God anymore, I don't really have much information to say definitively whether one does exist or not. So that's the agnostic part. Like the I could be wrong part, I mean,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, aliens could have created the universe too, so I could be wrong. Um,
It's
I
sort
don't
of like a
know.
humility. And plus, you
Yeah.
can't really prove God doesn't exist technically.
I
So
mean,
we're
after
all,
being self-righteous when I was Muslim, I can't help but try to be as humble as I can now.
yeah,
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 I
that
was
too.
pretty self-righteous when I was Muslim. I felt like we had it all figured out, like we were the one. But there were times that I would wonder, like, really, like, do all these other people in the world think that they're right too? I mean, and when I'd be like in my super religious, like more conservative phases, I would feel so sad and I'd get depressed because I would be thinking like the whole world's going to hell, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like I just want to shout. I want to be like those people in the street, trying to tell them like, the rapture's coming, Like that's how I felt. I mean, it was that I was very passionate about it
Yeah,
and I
like
took it seriously.
I feel like you're introverted if I can make that assumption.
Introverted? What do you mean?
Yeah, like instead of extrovert, you're more of like an introvert, someone that thinks a lot and kind of keeps to themselves kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm an extrovert, I guess, in around the right people.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely more of like a thinker and more of an observer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say I'm an intellectual because I don't read far as much as I should, but I do read a lot on the internet.
But it's
Um,
like when you have that sort of like introverted personality, like for me, I was sort of like a hermit too. Like I studied the religion a lot, and
mhm,
I had the same feelings that you had. Like,
mhm,
man, like I wish everybody knew about Islam. I wish because I kind of
mhm.
hate the world. Why are they acting so free? Like, man, they're just enjoying this world, you know?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
don't know what's coming, and I believed all the hadiths about like the torture in the grave and
yeah,
the seven select people that will get shaded from the sun on Judgment Day. Do you remember all that?
yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, like
It's
Judgment Day is horrible. Like the sun is like so close to you that you're gonna drown in your own sweat. Even the
mhm,
believers
mhm.
are going to drown in their own sweat, and the bridge of Barzakh, and like
Yeah.
you're walking across this thin sword blade type of
Mhm,
bridge, and
mhm,
some of even if you're a Muslim, you could fall over into hellfire. So
mhm.
there's a lot of paranoia found
Yeah,
in the hadiths.
yeah. There's also a lot of abusive, like for this sounds a bit harsh, I guess, in words, but I don't know how else to describe it. But the relationship I had with God, at least with Allah, and the way that I understood Allah to be, was it's kind of an abusive relationship. It was a one-way street, but it was abusive
Hmm.
in terms of I felt like I had to love this God or else,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. I
Like
know
the
what you mean.
love
Like no
came
other
kind of
choice.
forced in a way. I mean, I felt gratitude and love for God, like, when I believed in him, like, he created me and I wouldn't be here without him. But when it came to all the other things that I didn't understand, the torture of hell, the admonishment and punishment of women and the oppression, and especially for me because I'm quite a feminist and not the third wave kind, but like I really valued my identity as a woman and my freedoms as a woman, and just so many things that I learned in Islam conflicted with that, and it was just very hard to reconcile those two things. And I remember even there was a lecture that I listened to. I can't remember who it was by, but it was about loving the Prophet Muhammad and how like that's like one of the requirements for you to go to Jannah, for you to go to heaven.
Yeah.
And before that, I never really concerned myself with Prophet Muhammad, like having a loving relationship towards him or having some kind of love, right?
Yeah,
What?
like in the hadith, it says like a true believer loves Muhammad more than
Yeah,
his own parents.
exactly. And when I heard that, because how serious I was about the religion at the time, the power of suggestion really, really flipped a switch on or something. But it felt forced. Like I remember feeling it was kind of weird, but I had to tell myself, like, no, 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 this is okay, this is good. You love Prophet Muhammad, you know? And it was kind of it was I don't know, a little bit psychotic. It was very disturbing because this was someone that I was still trying to reconcile a lot of things that I didn't agree with. And I wasn't sure if I mean, how could I love a person I've never met, I've never known? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It just doesn't make
like
any sense.
and you can develop like a fanaticism towards it because I remember a family member of mine
Hmm.
actually said, I question Muhammad's marriage to Aisha because she was 9 and he was 54, and that enraged me as a Muslim. Like I was just like, how the hell can he question this? And I was like
Yeah.
clenching my fists and
I
gritting
know,
my
like, when's
teeth.
the last time you revealed like a holy text? Like, shut the hell up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You have no authority here.
yeah.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
And yeah, it's abusive in that aspect because like you're not really thinking about it logically. And many non-Muslims ask me, how does any Muslim follow this religion? Well, it's because we were raised with it, and the smart ones leave quicker than others. But
Mhm.
for those that spent years with it, thinking that this is the final revelation,
Mhm.
this is it, because Islam came to
Yeah.
confirm the message of Jesus and Moses and everything like that. When you truly believe that, it's very
Yeah.
powerful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always thought of it as like the last update, to the Judeo-Christian trilogy, I guess.
Yeah.
Like we had the updated version, those other two groups didn't get the memo, I guess. I don't know. Um, but yeah, and I remember when I was on YouTube or whenever I'd be online, I'd get all kinds of hate, from especially a lot of right-wing, anti-Islamic kind of people. And let me tell you something, if anyone listening is kind of like that, that does not help when you just comment and or tell me like, Prophet Muhammad was a pedophile.
Right.
That just kind of made me filter anything that these people said.
Yeah,
I
you
got
brought
good at filtering it.
sorry, you brought up like something I just want to get off my chest too. Like
Yeah.
people often ask me, "What do you think about Robert Spencer or Waleed Shubat and all these like right wingers and Pamela
Mhm.
Geller and all these people?" At
Uh,
first, I was scared as fuck from them. Like I didn't want to listen to them at all because their followers are so harsh, and like they're that like these people that promote these anti-Muslim,
mhm,
anti-Islam type of people. Look, they have truth with them. Now that I look at it, like they have
mhm.
truth with them, but the way they
Mhm.
say shit is just like kill all Muslims. And they might be
Yeah.
denying it right now. No, 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 no. We don't say that, but they actually do write that shit. They say
Mhm.
kill all Muslims. Muhammad is a pedophile. Islam's the most evil religion in the world.
Mhm.
Fuck this Arabian death cult. Like, I mean, it's funny. I guess you can use it, but like, you're not gonna help Muslims that way. You're not gonna
That
help.
didn't help me at all. In fact, that pushed me away from questioning or even considering the points that they were trying to make. Because
Right.
it was just like an us versus them kind of thing. And I had to think, oh, these people are just discriminating against me because I'm Muslim.
Yeah, and someone like Sam Harris, like when I listened to him,
Hmm.
even if I discovered him as a Muslim, which
Hmm.
I wish I did, but I didn't. If I listen to him, the way he talks, the way he presents his facts, that's helpful. Things like that, like people like that are helpful. But if you're just like on this whole, the sad thing is like a lot of people they weren't raised with Islam or they don't know anything and they think they can just come and impose like their culture and just
Yeah.
say whatever the fuck they want. And I'm
Mhm.
just saying, man, dude, you're not helping the Muslims that way.
No, not at all. It sure didn't help me. I mean, if someone came up to me and like had an honest conversation or maybe get me to think a little bit, maybe question, that approach definitely would have been a lot better. Like what's his name? Like Anthony Magnabosco on YouTube, if you've heard of him.
No, I
Um,
haven't heard of him.
oh, you need to check out his channel. He's amazing. He does um, like a Socrates method of questioning people and interviewing people about their God beliefs or religious beliefs in the street. and he does these on like campuses in Texas or something like that. And I think he's following that book, How to Create an Atheist by Peter Boghossian, I think. I can't pronounce his name.
Okay.
It's just like a way of like non-debate, like non-conflicting kind of way of just honestly trying to understand how people come to their beliefs. And when they're doing that, they sort of have to question themselves and go, oh, you know what, that kind of doesn't make sense, you know? And it's actually quite effective. Like, I wish someone would have approached me like that before. That would have been far more effective for me.
Yeah, like there's this ex-Muslim I think named Al Rasul IQ Al Rasuli, and I don't bash him. I don't hate him at all. Like he has some really good information. I think
Hmm.
like these Robert Spencer type of people or Al Rasuli or any of these people that are clear cut when it comes to Islam, they're helpful for the ex-Muslim and people who already left Islam, but for their approaches all the time, like for Muslims, oh, I'm gonna deconvert Muslims. No, you're just living in a pipe dream, a fantasy world. You do have to change your approach when
Hmm.
it comes to Muslims if you want them to realize it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, so yeah, I guess I kind of want to get more into the because when I was questioning Islam, yes, I did go through a lot of depression. It's one of the reasons why I've had a very hard last few years since I got married. And it's weird because like all this happened after I got married, and it was, and not just that. I mean, my family actually moved back to the U.S., and so I was pretty much on my own here. Um, and so after questioning all this stuff and then realizing that I don't want to have anything to do with the religion anymore, it doesn't make sense to me anymore. And in fact, in many ways, I actually felt lied to about certain things. Maybe I'm stretching that a bit, only because, you know, I felt like my parents should have done a better job, I guess, investigating a little bit.
Mhm.
But I guess they're just a product of their own environment. Um, yeah, and so it really did put me down. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I realized how much my identity as a Muslim impacted my decision to get married. Even
Wow.
though I got married for love, but I didn't realize how much that had to do with it until after I started questioning Islam and I left it. It was very hard to reconcile with.
Did you find like any ex-Muslim support group or talk to any ex-Muslims? I know like Faith the Faithless has one, and I don't know if you reached
Not
out.
in Egypt, no. I mean, I've talked to maybe a couple of atheists. I've talked to one that's actually quite famous here, but I don't really agree with his tactics. I mean, he just kind of just spews really bad stuff on TV whenever he gets a chance, and it doesn't help at all. Um, but I think his name's like Ahmed Harkan, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, but I've had like a Quranist friend who I met, and when you're a Quranist, at least when I was, I felt like I was the only one in the world. I assume you feel like that when you're an ex-Muslim as well. The first time, you feel like you're the only one.
Yeah.
And when I reached out to a couple of Quranist friends here, I got to know them. She was also half American like me, and we're still friends, and we've both become atheists actually in our own individual ways. But it's not really much of a support group because she is also feeling the effects of the ostracized, being ostracized as an ex-Muslim. Her family's giving her a very hard time. She has to like move out and be on her own, and it's crazy. And she's like so young.
So what
Um,
about Sharif Gabber? You heard of him on YouTube? He's pretty famous.
no, actually, Sharif Gabber. I'm looking that up.
He's an Egyptian ex. I think he's ex-Muslim. I mean, he's
Um,
always talking about Islam, but he does videos in Arabic and
I
English.
might have seen him on the news, but I haven't seen his videos. No.
Oh wow, yeah, he's got about like 30,000 subs, and he's like in hiding or something like that. But he's really effective. I like his approach too. But
Hmm.
yeah, well, I don't know. I'm about to wrap it up because it is getting long. But is there anything else that you want to say to anybody who's listening or anything
Um,
else?
Yeah, I would. Whenever you get those thoughts in your head about like when you're trying to reconcile who you are or what your morals really are with your religion, listen to that voice because it's so worth it. The last thing that I kind of wanted to say that I didn't get a chance to get into was that I realized after I became Muslim, after being, I left Islam, I realized I was bisexual and I had suppressed that for so long. And it's not easy to go through that, especially after you've made a commitment to someone. You know, it's not like you can all of a sudden try to figure it out on your own. No, you know, you kind of it's difficult. And so the earlier you can question that, the better, I'll say. Um,
Yeah, always like keep an open mind.
yeah, and look up the history of hadith and the way it was compiled. I mean, if we don't believe the Bible because it was written centuries later or compiled later or whatever, then we definitely should not be considering hadith as an authentic source at all. And then after that, you need to question, okay, if the hadith is out of the picture, how do you know what the Quran is really trying to tell you? I mean, because it's not as clear as it claims to be at all.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and I would also add like it's a 1400-year-old religion. So
Yeah.
it's a 1400-year-old religion. So you have to keep that in mind. Like even with Sikhism, it's like 500 years old and they still
Mhm.
have a lot of backwardsness to it. So also keep that in mind. Like you always say like, the Judaism and Christianity, you bash that for being old, but
Mhm.
Islam is old as well. So they
Yeah.
have practices, you're praying in Arabic, you're reading the Quran in Arabic.
Mhm.
Question that, why
Mhm.
why is it all in Arabic and Arabic culture and everything like
Mhm.
that? And then I think more people will open their mind
Yeah,
about it.
definitely.
But yeah, thank you so much. Like it was nice,
Thank
and we'll probably do this in the future. So thank
Oh,
you.
I'd love to. That would be awesome.
Yeah, let me know. I'm glad that we're in contact. So we'll keep in touch and everything. So thank you so much for this.
Thank
I'll
you.
see
Thank you.
you.
And I hope this helps someone. And I hope I wasn't like, my voice wasn't shaking or something. I was really nervous in the beginning.
No, it's great. I'm glad that this was kind of on the spot. So I'm glad that
Mhm. Mhm.
we kind of did it.
All right. Well, thank you so much.